Welcome to Shorty Supercoach, and today we're going to take a look at all the action that happened in the Marsh Community Series, the first week of that. It's always a pretty interesting time, I reckon. Pre-season games happen, we finally get something to judge everything on, and it can be very exciting, but it can also be like being at a nightclub past 2 a.m. Sometimes you make some interesting decisions, but it's important to be very, very consistent with your thought process, because if we get a bit hasty off the back of a game or two in pre-season with different game plans, no taggers, different percentages of time on ground, main players of the side actually not playing, we can sometimes get a misguided view of what's actually happening. So it's worth keeping that in mind, but they definitely provide some evidence or reassurance to what we've already been thinking. So I'm going to go through game by game, and I will look to timestamp the players as well, because it's most likely going to be a fairly lengthy video. So I will timestamp a few names, which will hopefully help you guys find the players you're looking for. St Kilda and Hawthorn kick things off. And actually, before I do that, quick shout out to a few of my Patreons, Caddy, Philip and Gruffy. Just wanted to give them a bit of a shout out and appreciate your support. They've sort of recently jumped on board, so I just wanted to give them a little shout out. But the Saints and the Hawks, they kicked off proceedings, and there were certainly a few names that I was keen to see. Sort of had this game on in the background as I had a bit of a barbecue, so it wasn't closely watched. But Rowan Marshall, I think, is an interesting guy. I haven't really sung his praises through the pre-season. 117 Supercoach, 24 hit-outs, 13 touches, couple of goals. His points definitely got boosted by those couple of goals, but, sharing the ruck load with Ryder is going to be interesting. I still don't think he's going to be a selection that we're after, because I feel sharing the ruck load with Paddy will decrease his average, but certainly produced a good score there. One guy that I have sung the praises of, Hunter Clark, he certainly provided a fair bit of promise as well. 22 touches, 97 Supercoach. And he did look pretty impressive. I know that passage of play where he burst out of the centre and then put it inside 50, he really looked a classy player, the sort of guy who you always feel has a fair bit of time on their hands. Now, he didn't bang the door down. He didn't say, you got to pick me, but he also said, you got to consider me because I'm there and abouts. And it is awkward. He is awkwardly priced. There's no doubt about that. It's a price where you can go bang or go bust, but he gave us something to think about. Max King also, nothing to write home about in terms of the stats, but looks like he's going to play, and he should most likely be a pretty solid rookie for us in the forward line. He's not going to be super consistent with his scores, given his role and being a key forward and a young one at that, but he looks very likely to play a fair few games this season. Jade Gresham, 21 touches, 9 clearances from just the 59% time on ground. And it's crucial to read the time on ground, because, it's not always, it's not like they play 50% time on ground and you double it. It's not like that. But it is interesting to see that their scores and stats and the time on ground. And obviously Gresham didn't play a full game, but produced some really, really good numbers. Now, obviously we can't predict, and it's a dangerous game to think what he would have worked those numbers up to if he played the normal 75 to 85% time on ground. But he's definitely a guy that there's been a fair bit of talk for a couple of years now, breakout contender style, and he looked to put his case forward fairly strongly. So I think a few people out there will be really keen to see what he does second up too. Over at the Hawks, mainly it was all about Tom Mitchell, and he did give us a lot to think about. 21 touches from his 61% time on ground in classic Mitchell style, 13 contested and 6 clearances to go along with it. And that equated to 89 Supercoach. So, of course, he's not going to play the full quota of minutes. They're going to look to ease him back. But I'm still in the thought of definitely not. I think at that price, what is he, 630? Surely he's going to be managed at times. And it's just a risk anyway, coming off that sort of an injury. But he's also the sort of player that just finds the footy instinctually. And fitness or not, he's just a ball magnet. But my concern is I wouldn't be surprised if a first month of footy he averages 110, 115. My concern is over the whole season, you're paying more than 600k. You need this guy to be averaging quality premium numbers over 20 plus games, the whole season really. And I'm not super confident. I'm not saying definitely won't, but I just think there's a lot more risk than a few of the other names that are floating around him at the same price. So something to consider. Chad Wingard had the 15 touches, 56 Supercoach from basically half the game. Again, he's a guy that I think will be hoping to play a fair bit more midfield time, and he is going to provide people with a bit of a headache if they are starting to think about him, because he has just been a long time tempter and a bit of a tease at times. He's been outstanding with his numbers in certain years, and then we feel like he's undervalued. We go with him. He goes bust, change of club, interrupted pre-season, interrupted season, midfield, forward. Where the hell does this bloke belong? But I think if he does play through the middle, or at least predominantly, he'll still always have a fair bit of time in attack, but he could be a pretty solid scorer. I mentioned him in the unique premiums video I did, and I think he's genuinely a guy that could end up being premium, but to start with him would be pretty ballsy. And John Patton, I've seen a bit of a rise in his ownership numbers too, and I'm certainly not endorsing that either. I mean, he kicked the 3 goals, 74 Supercoach from his 12 touches, but he's going to be up and down like a yo-yo with his scoring. He's a key forward, hasn't played much footy. In a club that's just going to be middle of the road, I really don't think he's a great selection, but I think his ownership was up to about 13 or 14%, I think, and I wouldn't be getting sucked into anything John Patton style. I really just don't think that he's going to be a great selection. I presume most people are looking at him for R2. That would be my prediction, that most of those owners have him in the R2 position, but no, not for me at all. But that's all I had for that game there. If we move along to the Dogs and North Melbourne, and obviously Timmy English didn't play, which was disappointing for me because I was really keen to see how he went, but he's still on my side, and English owners, don't panic. Let's just wait and see what he does next up, and I'm still pretty confident about him. But Marcus Bontempelli, talk about an increase in ownership. He was on about 15% before the game, and 22% of coaches own him now. So, and I guess scoring 195 Supercoach points will do that. He absolutely dominated. 37 touches, couple of goals, 10 clearances. Not a bad day out for the Bont. Now, okay, it's pre-season. Let's not get absolutely carried away, but still, it's hard to ignore that. And we know that he's a sort of guy that can impact, with 27, let alone 37. And he certainly showed what he could do. Jack Macrae does what he does, 32 touches, 124. Just a casual afternoon. And Dunkley was similar. He turned up. That trio is going to be about as reliable as you get. They remind me of the Pendlebury Beams and Swan. They really are just a dominant midfield trio. That's pretty much all I have for the Dogs. Daniel was solid and that, but they're sort of the main guys I think people would have been looking for. North Melbourne, Aiden Bonar really put his hand up. 15 touches, 8 clearances, 76 Supercoach from 61% time on ground. And I've got to say, I didn't see this game. Even if I did watch it, I certainly would have been seeing it flee. That was meant to be fairly blurry. I thought I was drunk on Friday night. Maybe I still am drunk, stumbling over the words. But look, he's certainly a guy that's putting his hand up. I think we get interested when we see a change of clubs, a guy that's a big body, dying for some midfield time. And like I said, wasn't watching the game because I was having a couple of cans. But I'd love to know if he really did get great midfield opportunity. His numbers certainly read like he did. And at about 202k, he's certainly a guy that will be piquing some interest if he can get that round 1 berth and be in the mix. And Paul Ahern, 14 kicks, 3 handballs, 45 Supercoach points from 57% time on ground. Again, didn't see it, but those numbers certainly read like a designated kicker out of half back. So that's a pretty Supercoach friendly role, as we know. But he's bloody awkward in terms of the price. You'd be you'd be a brave coach to go with him. Now, Melbourne-Adelaide, I did see this game, and it was absolutely geared towards one man, Christian Petracca. And look, if you're a long-time watcher of this channel, you know my love for Christian Petracca. And, well, if you're not, here's a little rewind on last 3 or 4 years where I've just pumped him up time and time again. Christian Petracca is probably the one I like the most out of that trio of young guys. You get him in the forward line, $395,000. I certainly think if he can get a bit of opportunity in midfield and play basically permanent midfield, he could be capable of going somewhere in the 90s, I really feel. He's ready to go, he's ready to explode, and I'm really confident with this selection. I think he's really going to step up and become an absolute A-grader. We've seen him in glimpses, have fantastic games, fantastic quarters. I definitely feel like he's going to string it all together this season. So he's a man I've had in from day dot. He has not moved out of my side, and he will not move out of my side. I'm a really big fan of him. So that wraps up the breakout contenders. I'm a massive fan. I have been for a long time. I think the day will definitely come where we talk about Petracca as one of the best scorers. I think he'll be able to push 3 figures at some stage in his career. I mean, could this be the year? I've talked this bloke up, as you see, time and time again. Midfield time this, midfield time that. Every single time he has let me down. But he had 38 touches, 7 tackles, 27 contested possessions, 6 clearances, and 188 Supercoach. He looked lean yet powerful. He was dominant, good in the air. He did it all. And people are getting on board. Am I getting on board? No, I am not, because I was very impressed with Hugh Greenwood at F3 as well. And there is a bit of scar tissue there, because Petracca, he has hurt me. He really has. And there's just a part of me that still thinks that he will not get that absolute push of midfield time. But if we get another performance like we did on Saturday afternoon, that's a real take notice performance if I've ever seen one. So he is absolutely on the watch list big time. Clayton Oliver, really solid, 136 from his 31 touches. And Tommy McDonald, averaged 97 or whatever it was in 2018. He scored 139. I mean, I certainly wouldn't endorse him, but there will be people out there that just have a think about it. If they think the D's are going to respond, and he's always a beneficiary with his contested marks and constantly hitting the scoreboard. Just a little mid-price, he's a tempter really, but I'd be steering clear personally. These were the mention. And Tom Sparrow, a bit of a random one, but 17 touches, 77 Supercoach, had the 6 clearances. And he's 182k in the forward line. So just a little watch there. Let's not get carried away, but just a little watch. Let's have a look what he does in the second practice game. As for Adelaide, Wayne Milera was definitely the guy that caught my attention. 103 Supercoach points from his 29 touches. Took a lot of kick-ins and certainly had a lot of dash from defence and was a real go-to guy. And I think we've certainly predicted him to be a breakout contender as well for a few years. And if he can stay fit, then a good average certainly looks very likely. I guess the question is, can that average boost itself up to keeper? Can he be an actual top 6 to 8 defender? I think the numbers will definitely go up. It's just how far. But probably also worth taking note on that position is how it'll affect Rory Laird as well. Now, he had the 13 touches, 49 Supercoach from 41% time on ground, but we probably need to see a bit more. And the fact that Milera certainly took the cake out of half-back, for the Crows. He certainly was the ball mover and the go-to guy. It'll be really interesting to see how they go with 4 quarters each. Laird's a ball magnet. He always finds it. It's just, does he always hurt you? Does he do enough damage? I think it was 4 kicks, 9 handballs. Does he do enough damage? Is he just going to score a lot of, polite 90s? But I don't know. Does he still have that 37 touch game that gets him 130? Or is he just more your high 20s guy with, anything between 85 and 110? It's going to be interesting to see. Chayce Jones, 17 touches, 74 Supercoach. There's been a bit of talk about him. Former number 9 pick, I think he was, a couple of years ago in the national draft. He's awkwardly priced as well, and he certainly didn't write himself off, but we're going to need to see a bit more, I think. A lot of people would have been having a look at him, but at that sort of price, we're just going to have to see a bit more. But he didn't, real nice goal. But I just think we're going to have to wait and see. Rory Sloane got injured. I'm not sure on the extent of that, but I know a few people were taking a liking to him. Reilly O'Brien, 13 touches, 31 hitouts, 95 Supercoach. Just real solid, and I think that's what he's going to be. Really solid and reliable, and I think he's in about 7% of sides in that R2 spot, but it is a no from me, and the negatives are the same reason of the positives. He is solid, he is reliable, but I don't think it's enough. I'd probably see him averaging, high 90s, maybe early 100s. I'm talking sort of Ben McAvoy style, Stef Martin type, but I just don't see him going above 105. And I just don't know if, he's about 517k, I think. And I've said it before, if you're not going Gordon Grundy and you're just going the one of those big guns, then your second guy surely has to have a little bit more value than a bloke who averaged 95 last year, because unless you think that 95 is going to turn into 110, if that 95 just plateaus or we see slight improvement, to even 102, he's going to be solid, but you're probably going to have to trade him out at some point. Now, do we want to spend more than 500k on a guy that we're going to eventually trade out? I don't think so. So it probably comes down to that, but he does seem to be a increasingly popular selection, at least in the circles that I read. Let me just get myself a water as I bust through a few of these teams. I'll move on to Gold Coast and the Cats, and obviously I was watching in on that one and was pretty disappointed, disenchanted with some of the performances from the Geelong players, but it's only a practice game, so we won't get absolutely carried away with it. But there was plenty to like from a Gold Coast point of view, and as I touched on a few minutes ago, Hugh Greenwood, 25 touches, 14 contested, 6 clearances, 109 Supercoach. They're the numbers that I've talked about all season, or pre-season, I should say, that he's going to produce. He's going to do that, and that's why I feel it's not that difficult for him to take his 86 to 93 or 94, maybe even 96 sort of deal. I don't think it's going to be super tough because he is getting great opportunity in that midfield. Definitely a big watch. Matty Rowell, 20 touches, 15 contested from about 3/4 of the game, or 2/3 of the game, if I get my maths going, and 100 Supercoach points. So, he just showed all the signs that we really had looked for and hoped for, and he's a lock as far as I'm concerned. To be winning that much contested pill at his age in his first up game at AFL standard, very impressive. Connor Budarick, I want to predict I'm saying that right, but he was impressive. Real nice goal, 14 touches, 74 Supercoach. He's a mid forward at 106k, and I think he's definitely worth considering. I mean, it's tough to get a gauge exactly how the Suns are going and how their best 22 looks, but he certainly put his best foot forward. He looked really promising. Lachie Weller as well. He's a guy that I think could slide under the radar. He's available as a defender. Now, he was a bit of a wonder boy coming to the Suns, He's a former, what was he, I can't remember what pick he was, but I think they gave up pick 2 for him or something like that. And 19 touches from 48% time on ground, 75 Supercoach. Available as a defender, as I mentioned, and he has played a bit in the back line, but his trade is mid. He's a midfielder at his best, and I think that's what the end product's going to be, a midfielder. I just wonder whether we'll see it this year and how it all sort of works in, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's a guy that not many people have selected by round 1, but by round 6 we're going, gee, maybe we could have. But again, I'm probably not brave enough to go with him either. So, and Jack Lukosius as well, 274k, 70 Supercoach, 56% time on ground, 18 touches. Now, really nice position he's playing. He's down back, just a Supercoach friendly role. Yeah, he's reliable and responsible for a man, but I really like his ball use. He looks the goods. Now, I think he could improve his average by 25 points at least. Now, that'd take him to somewhere in the high 90s. Maybe he's capable of the mid 80s, but again, I'm not endorsing him too strongly because at 274k, it's awkwardly priced, no doubt about that. But he's a very talented player, we know that. So again, probably not a stack of chat about him, but he's worth thinking about. As for the Cats, I could find next to nothing. Okay, they had a few stars out, but Brad Close was about all I could find. He wasn't even that good. 12 touches, 51 Supercoach. He's a mid-forward at 109k. And I know he has really been a bit of a bolter in the pre-season, so he could be in line for a round one spot, but he probably needs a bit more of a solid game second up if he gets that opportunity. But other than that, there was not much on offer for the Cats at all. As we move into the last game, Brisbane and Port Adelaide, and Lachie Neale was just dominant. 47 touches, 12 clearances, 168 Supercoach. No surprises there. You let a bloke like that just run around, he's going to do what he does best, and that's just find the pill. So again, don't need to convince you on Neale, but he's a superstar. Stef Martin, okay, he was up against Laddams and Westhoff by looks of it, but 138 Supercoach, 37 hitouts, classic sort of Martin game. Good possession count for a ruckman, contested possessions, few clearances. It's his style. But again, I don't think we'd be going for him. I definitely think that score, it's going to entice a few people. But I wouldn't get carried away. I wouldn't be starting with him. I really do think that Martin is on the downward slide. He's not going to drop off a cliff, but I don't think those numbers will be too consistent. Grant Birchall, 13 touches, 46 Supercoach from 67% time on ground. I hope we're not getting lulled into picking the former Hawk. I really don't think so. He's going to be a solid contributor, but I really don't think we should start him. And a couple of young guys, Starcevich and Smith, they came on for about a half. Smith only played 33% time on ground and really couldn't get near it, just the 4 touches, 18 Supercoach. He's going to want a better performance if he's going to break his way into that extremely strong Brisbane side. And Starcevich was a fair bit more impressive, He had 40 Supercoach points from obviously about 45% time on ground. He's been really impressive through the pre-season, and he's got to be a chance, but he's not going to get great midfield time. Be really interesting if he can just break into the actual 22. He could give us something to think about, and he's about 140-something thousand in the back line. Over at Port Adelaide, it was all about Dan Houston. 96 Supercoach, 22 touches, and 10 clearances. Very, very good numbers. And I think we can be pretty safe with this selection at this point in time. He's a guy under 500k in our back lines who's going to play midfield. That got confirmed, no doubt, on Sunday. And I think if he wasn't in a lot of sides already, I think a fair few people will be getting him in. And Connor Rozee as well, 422k, 19 touches, 12 contested, couple of goals from just 57% time on ground. Phil shot me a question about this during the week. And look, I can't endorse him because he is at 422k really tough to make there's not that much value there. And I mean, there's value if you think he can be a premium, but I don't think he's ready to absolutely step into premium status, despite me saying that I don't think it'll take much more than a 93 average to be a keeper in the forward line. But he's got all the tricks. He's a very talented player. If he backs it up in the second game with a similarly impressive performance, it's going to give us something to think about. He can find the scoreboard real easy. And the talk is that, they want to get him higher up the ground and into that midfield rotation. So at this point in time, I'm not saying get on board, but he gave us something to think about. Now, like I said, if he plays another practice game and looks the goods, all of a sudden, maybe I've got to take him a little bit more seriously. But a lot can go wrong paying 420k for such an inexperienced guy, but he does seem to be a bit different. He's a bit of a special type, so we'll have to wait and see. But that about covers it off. Let me know if I've missed any names or anyone that you really like the look of, any probably rookie players. You get a better feel for that when you watch the actual game. I watched the majority of the games, but yeah, let me know what you think, because there's a fair few names for us to think about, and it does make us want to shuffle our sides around, that's for sure. I haven't done much shuffling yet. I'll take a look at my side pretty soon. I'll give you guys a look at it probably in the coming week or something like that. But yeah, watch closely. There's always a few people that put their hands up through pre-season. Sometimes we get sucked in, they let us down. Sometimes they're genuine gems. So it's about finding out who's who. But thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.